Is Diddy the most protected man in hip-hop? Or the most dangerous? For years, whispers about his connection to some of the darkest moments in music history have floated through the industry. But now, those whispers are turning into full-blown accusations. Suge Knight, the man who was sitting next to Tupac the night he was shot, and Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, are both pointing fingers. And they're not just throwing out wild stories. They're naming names, exposing secrets, and accusing Diddy of being something far worse than anyone imagined. Gene Deal says Diddy isn't just a music mogul. He's been playing both sides. While building bad boy records, partying with celebrities, and dominating the charts, he was allegedly feeding information to the FBI, protecting himself from the inside while people around him disappeared, got locked up, or worse. And now, Gene is under attack. He says Diddy sent street hitters to silence him. Suge Knight is backing up his story from behind bars. And Keefe D, the man on trial for Tupac's murder, is calling Diddy out by name. Something is happening behind the scenes, and if what these men are saying is true, it could shatter everything we thought we knew about Tupac's death and Diddy's empire. But this story doesn't start with a court case. It starts with a man who refused to stay silent. Gene Deal isn't just some YouTuber chasing clout. He was inside the bad boy machine. As Diddy's personal bodyguard for over a decade, Gene saw everything. The parties, the deals, the intimidation, and the fear that followed Diddy like a shadow. But now, he's done keeping secrets. In a series of explosive interviews, Gene claims that Diddy has been working with the FBI for years, not just as a casual source, but as a full-blown informant. According to Gene, that's how Diddy managed to avoid getting indicted while people around him kept getting locked up or silenced. The timing? Too perfect. The protection? Too consistent. And the silence from law enforcement? Too suspicious. But Gene didn't stop there. He dropped a bombshell, alleging that Diddy wasn't just dodging heat. He was actively covering up his role in Tupac Shakur's murder. Gene says Diddy helped plan the hit, and when it all went down, he used his informant status to wipe his hands clean. No questions, no charges, just silence. And now, Gene says his life is in danger. He claims Diddy didn't go to the cops when he wanted him dealt with. He went to the streets. Gene says Diddy told his people, "If you see him, do him dirty." Not scare him, not warn him. Take him out. It's no longer just about what Gene knows. It's about what he's willing to say. And apparently, he's ready to say it all, even if it means putting a target on his own back. Because once you break the code of silence in this game, there's no turning back. From the inside of a prison cell, Suge Knight, Death Row's ruthless founder, finally said what many had only dared to whisper. Diddy knew exactly what he was doing the night Tupac was gunned down. In a raw and unfiltered interview, Suge painted a picture of betrayal, power plays, and bloodshed. He says the East Coast-West Coast beef could have ended before it ever turned deadly. But Diddy? He didn't want peace. According to Suge, Puffy refused to squash the beef, even after behind-the-scenes attempts to calm tensions. Instead, Diddy doubled down. And then, just weeks later, Tupac was gone. Suge didn't stop there. He described a moment outside the House of Blues, a place where rappers, gangsters, and industry elites all crossed paths. It was tense, heated, and Suge claims Diddy had already put the pieces in place for what was coming next. But here's where it gets chilling. Suge says Keefe D, now the key witness in Tupac's murder trial, is telling the truth. He says Puffy did offer $1 million to take out both Tupac and Suge that night in Vegas. Only one of them survived. And if Suge's version is real, then that wasn't a robbery. That was a hit, and Diddy was the money man behind it. And now, decades later, Suge is behind bars. Tupac is 6 feet under, and Diddy, still free, still rich, still untouchable. But that's not the end of it. Because someone else is backing up Suge's claims, and this time it's coming straight from the courtroom. In a courtroom packed with reporters and federal agents, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis did something that stunned even the most jaded insiders. He named names. And one of those names was Sean Diddy Combs. Keefe D isn't just a random street figure. He's the only living witness to Tupac's murder who was actually in the car when the fatal shots were fired. And now, facing charges himself, Keefe D is finally talking. But what he's saying, it's shaking the entire industry. In sworn testimony, Keefe D claims that Diddy approached him back in the 90s and offered $1 million to take out both Tupac and Suge Knight. The deal was simple. Get it done, no questions asked. Keefe D even described the exact meeting, where it happened, who was there, and how the plan was set in motion. The night Tupac was killed in Vegas, Keefe D says it wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't gang retaliation. It was a paid hit, ordered by Diddy himself, according to Keefe's story. And the prosecutors, they're listening. But here's the wildest part. Diddy hasn't denied these claims in court. No official statement, no lawsuit for defamation, just silence. It raises a chilling question. Is this silence an admission? Or is Diddy so insulated, so powerful, that he doesn't even have to respond? And if Keefe D's story holds up in court, it won't just implicate Diddy. It could unravel one of the biggest cover-ups in hip-hop history. But if this was just about Tupac, maybe it would have ended there. The truth is, it didn't, because what Gene Deal said next connected everything. According to Gene Deal, Diddy didn't just outsmart the streets, he outplayed the feds too. In one of his most shocking claims, Gene says Diddy has been acting as a federal informant for years, feeding the FBI information to protect himself while letting the people around him take the fall. Sounds like a conspiracy, right? But when you start looking at the pattern, it starts to make sense. Over the years, Diddy's been surrounded by gun charges, assault allegations, and even federal investigations into his business dealings. Yet somehow, he always walks away untouched. Meanwhile, his associates, Shine, G-Dep, and others, end up behind bars, their careers destroyed. Every time the heat gets close, Diddy slides through, untouched, unbothered. Gene says that's no accident. He claims Diddy's connections with law enforcement run deep. So deep, in fact, that people in the streets stopped trying to retaliate, not because they were scared of Diddy, but because they were scared of what would happen if they did. As Gene put it, you can't go after a dude that's being protected by the same people who are supposed to arrest him. Even more disturbing? Gene alleges that Diddy used this connection to manipulate the industry, setting people up, sabotaging rivals, and keeping himself one step ahead of any threat. If someone got too close to the truth, suddenly they were either behind bars or completely erased from the spotlight. But here's the catch. Being a federal informant isn't illegal. It's just dirty. And in the world of hip-hop, where respect, loyalty, and street credibility matter, it's the ultimate betrayal. If Gene is telling the truth, then Diddy wasn't just playing the game. He was rewriting the rules behind the scenes. And now, it looks like those same rules are starting to fall apart, because what happens when the man who built the empire is no longer protected? When Gene Deal started talking, people listened. But when he kept talking, things got dangerous. Gene says the moment he began exposing Diddy's alleged secrets, everything changed. Old friends turned cold, strangers started watching his every move, and then the threats started rolling in. But the scariest moment? He says someone tried to take him out. In an emotional confession, Gene described a chilling encounter, an attempted attack that he believes wasn't random. He says this wasn't a robbery gone wrong or street beef. It was a targeted warning. Someone wanted him to shut up, and they didn't want to scare him. They wanted him gone. Gene didn't name names, but the implication was loud and clear. This went straight back to Diddy. He says Diddy didn't go to court to silence him. He went to the streets, told people to handle it. And in Gene's world, that kind of message doesn't need a signature. Everyone knows what it means. But instead of backing down, Gene doubled down. He started doing more interviews, speaking louder, naming names, exposing stories the industry had buried for decades. He made it clear, if something happens to him, the world will know who's behind it. He even said, "If they get me, just know I told the truth." It's no longer just about secrets or rumors. For Gene, this has become a matter of life or death. And if the allegations are true, it means the empire Diddy built wasn't just made of music and money, it was built on silence, fear, and control. But here's the thing about fear. Once it cracks, it spreads fast. And someone else has already started speaking up. Someone from inside the same industry machine. Behind the flashy parties, chart-topping hits, and billion-dollar brand, there was a darker reality, a world of manipulation, control, and gaslighting. And according to multiple insiders, Diddy wasn't just running the industry, he was running people's minds. Cassie's bombshell lawsuit cracked the door wide open. She painted a picture of a man who controlled every part of her life. What she wore, who she talked to, even when she could leave the house. But it didn't stop at physical control. What really broke her down was the mind games. Insiders say Diddy had a habit of emotionally dismantling the people closest to him, making them question their own reality, blaming them for his outbursts, then love-bombing them into silence. It was psychological warfare masked as love and loyalty. But when those tactics didn't work, that's when he pulled the rehab card. Multiple sources have claimed that when people around Diddy started becoming liabilities, too emotional, too outspoken, too unstable, he didn't cut them off. He sent them to rehab, not because they were addicted to anything, but because rehab became the industry's cleanest cover-up. Put someone in rehab and suddenly their credibility vanishes. They're labeled unwell, and anything they say afterward easily dismissed as delusion or bitterness. It's a tactic used by the powerful to bury voices without ever lifting a finger. And here's the creepiest part. A few of those people never came back the same. Broken careers, shattered confidence, total silence, like they'd been wiped clean. Gene Deal says this was part of Diddy's system, a pattern, a playbook for eliminating threats without ever pulling a trigger. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because when a man can destroy your reputation, rewrite your memories, and erase you from the spotlight, all without a single public scandal, you're not dealing with just a mogul. You're dealing with a master manipulator. And he wasn't done yet. Because next, we talk about the celebrities who tried to expose him, and what happened when they did. Behind the flashy parties, chart-topping hits, and billion-dollar brand, there was a darker reality, a world of manipulation, control, and gaslighting. And according to multiple insiders, Diddy wasn't just running the industry, he was running people's minds. Cassie's bombshell lawsuit cracked the door wide open. She painted a picture of a man who controlled every part of her life. What she wore, who she talked to, even when she could leave the house. But it didn't stop at physical control. What really broke her down was the mind games. Insiders say Diddy had a habit of emotionally dismantling the people closest to him, making them question their own reality, blaming them for his outbursts, then love-bombing them into silence. It was psychological warfare masked as love and loyalty. But when those tactics didn't work, that's when he pulled the rehab card. Multiple sources have claimed that when people around Diddy started becoming liabilities, too emotional, too outspoken, too unstable, he didn't cut them off. He sent them to rehab, not because they were addicted to anything, but because rehab became the industry's cleanest cover-up. Put someone in rehab and suddenly their credibility vanishes. They're labeled unwell, and anything they say afterward easily dismissed as delusion or bitterness. It's a tactic used by the powerful to bury voices without ever lifting a finger. And here's the creepiest part. A few of those people never came back the same. Broken careers, shattered confidence, total silence, like they'd been wiped clean. Gene Deal says this was part of Diddy's system, a pattern, a playbook for eliminating threats without ever pulling a trigger. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because when a man can destroy your reputation, rewrite your memories, and erase you from the spotlight, all without a single public scandal, you're not dealing with just a mogul. You're dealing with a master manipulator. And he wasn't done yet. Because next, we talk about the celebrities who tried to expose him, and what happened when they did. This is where it all collides. Truth versus power, loyalty versus fear, and one man's voice against an empire built on silence. For decades, Sean Diddy Combs ruled the industry with untouchable swagger. He wasn't just a mogul, he was the blueprint. Fame, fortune, and fear followed him like a shadow. But now, the cracks are impossible to ignore. Because Gene Deal isn't backing down. What started as whispered stories behind studio doors has now become a full-blown movement. And Gene? He's no longer alone. With Keefe D spilling courtroom secrets, Cassie's lawsuit drawing blood, and former insiders finally breaking ranks, the machine that once protected Diddy is starting to stall. But here's the haunting question. Can you really take down someone who's built their legacy on controlling every outcome? Gene says yes. He's staked his life, reputation, and safety on it. He believes the truth will win, that light will expose the darkness, and that this time, silence won't save the guilty. But Diddy isn't just sitting back. He's lawyering up, locking down assets and, as rumors suggest, possibly preparing for the biggest PR war of his life. And behind all the media noise, one thing remains chillingly unclear. How far will he go to protect the empire? This isn't just a story about old beef or forgotten grudges. This is the final round in a decades-long chess game, where every move could mean prison, power, or permanent silence. So now, we're all watching. Because whether it's Gene or Diddy who comes out on top, one thing is certain. The truth is no longer hiding, and the world is finally listening.